The war was finally over, and the great halls of the human fleet were filled with noise. Soldiers shouted with joy, captains raised their glasses, and music played loud. But in the middle of all the celebration stood one man who did not smile. His name was Daniel, a young soldier with tired eyes and scars that told stories of battles he did not want to remember. Daniel had fought bravely, not for glory, but only to survive. He had seen friends die, ships burn, and planets turn into ruins. Now that the war was over, he expected to be sent home. Forgotten like dust in the wind, but fate had other plans for him. The High Commander called Daniel forward in front of the cheering crowd. The commander's voice echoed across the hall as he announced, "This man is a hero. He fought with courage, and he deserves a reward." Daniel felt his stomach twist. He never trusted rewards, for in war every gift had a hidden cost. Then, to his shock, guards walked in carrying chains. At the end of those chains was not a weapon, not treasure, but a woman. She was tall, with silver hair that shimmered. Like moonlight, her skin was pale, marked with strange glowing lines. Her eyes burned like fire trapped behind glass, but around her neck was a heavy collar, and her wrists were bound with thick metal cuffs. The crowd gasped, some cheered, some laughed. "This," the commander said with a proud smile, "is your prize. She is an alien, captured from the enemy. She is yours now. A slave for you to keep." The hall erupted with cheers. But Daniel felt his chest tighten. A slave, he thought. A living being chained like an animal. The alien woman lifted her head and locked eyes with Daniel. There was no fear in her gaze. Only anger, only cold hatred. Her lips did not move, but her stare spoke louder than words. It was as if she was saying, "You may hold the chains, but you will never own me." Daniel's hands shook as the guards pushed the chains into his grip. The cold metal links felt heavier than any weapon he had carried. He wanted to drop them, to shout that this was wrong, but the eyes of the crowd were fixed on him, and the commander was smiling, waiting for his approval. "Take her," the commander said firmly. "She is dangerous, but she belongs to you now." Daniel nodded slowly, though every part of him screamed inside. The alien woman stood tall, even in chains, as if daring him to command her. The hall roared with laughter and music again. But Daniel heard nothing. All he heard was the sound of his own heartbeat and the silent promise in her burning eyes. Later, that night, Daniel walked the long steel corridors of the ship with the chained woman behind him. The soldiers they passed stopped to watch, whispering, pointing, mocking. Some called him lucky. Others warned him to keep her chained, or she would kill him in his sleep. But Daniel did not answer. He could not, because deep inside he already knew something was wrong. In his quarters, Daniel placed the chains against the wall. The woman stood silently, her arms heavy, her collar humming with strange energy. For a long time neither spoke. The room filled only with the hum of the ship's engines. Daniel tried to look away, but her eyes never left him. Sharp, glowing, alive. Finally, he whispered to himself. Not sure if he wanted her to hear. "Why me? Why give me you?" The woman tilted her head, and for the first time her lips curved, not in kindness, but in a faint, mocking smile. Daniel felt a chill crawl across his skin. It was not the smile of a broken slave, but the smile of someone who knew a secret that could change everything. As the ship drifted quietly through the endless stars, Daniel realized his so-called reward was no gift. It was a test, a trap, or perhaps the beginning of something much bigger than he could imagine. The chains rattled softly, and the woman's eyes glowed brighter in the dark. Daniel lay awake that night, unable to close his eyes, because he knew one thing with painful clarity. He had been given not a prize, but a storm, and that storm was now chained inside his room, waiting, watching, and planning the morning after. Daniel woke up with a heavy mind. He had not slept much, for the sound of the chains haunted his ears all night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those glowing eyes staring back at him in the dark, now in the cold light of day. The alien woman stood silently in the corner of his quarters. She had not moved from where he had left her, still bound, still chained, still watching. Daniel rose slowly and studied her. Her skin shimmered faintly under the dim light. The strange, glowing lines across her arms and neck pulsed like veins of fire. Her hair fell across her face, silver and bright, yet wild like a storm. She did not look weak. She did not look broken. Instead, she stood tall, straight, and unyielding, like a queen who refused to kneel. The silence between them grew heavier than the steel walls. Daniel finally spoke, his voice low, uncertain. "Do you understand me?" he asked. No answer. Only the sharp gaze of her eyes that never blinked. It felt less like he was looking at her, and more like she was looking through him. Peeling away the surface to see what hid inside, he poured water into a cup and placed it near her. Still no movement, no sound, no sign of need or weakness. Daniel sighed, turning away, whispering under his breath, "You're not human, but you're not a beast either." When he turned back, he thought he saw her lips curl for the briefest moment, as if amused by his words. But then her face returned to stone. Hours passed, and Daniel was ordered back to duty. The war might have ended, but patrols, reports, and training never stopped. He left her chained in his quarters, though something in his chest felt uneasy. When he returned later, the water was gone, the cup empty. She had drunk, but she had left no sign, no sound, no thanks. Days rolled on. Like this, she did not speak. She did not move unless commanded. But she was never truly still. Her eyes were always alive, burning, studying him with a sharpness that made Daniel's skin crawl. It was as though she was learning him, piece by piece, waiting for the right moment to strike. And yet, strangely, she never tried. She could have attacked in his sleep. She could have pulled at her chains in rage, but she did not. She only watched. And the silence grew sharper every day. One evening, Daniel's friend, a pilot named Carter, came to visit when he saw the alien in chains. He laughed and slapped Daniel on the back. "You lucky dog," Carter said, grinning. "Most men got medals, some got money, but you, you got yourself a pretty prize." Daniel's jaw tightened, his voice cold. "She's not a prize." Carter raised a brow, mocking. "Then what is she, Daniel? A pet? A decoration? Or maybe a secret lover?" He teased with a laugh. The alien woman's gaze flicked to Carter, sharp and fierce. And for the first time, Daniel saw her lips part. She did not speak, but she let out the faintest sound. A low hum, a growl. It was not human, and it silenced Carter instantly. The pilot's grin faded, his face pale. "Watch yourself, she's dangerous," he muttered. Before leaving quickly, after the door shut, Daniel turned back to her. Her eyes still glowed faintly, and her chains rattled softly as she straightened. He whispered, almost to himself, "You're not afraid of anyone, are you?" Her head tilted. And for the first time, she blinked slowly, deliberately, as if answering without words. That night, Daniel lay in his bunk again. Sleep would not come, because the silence pressed harder than ever. The ship creaked, the engines hummed, and from the corner of the room the sound of chains moving faintly filled the air. He looked at her through the dark. She was awake, always awake, her eyes glowing faint like twin moons. She was waiting, but for what? Daniel did not know. Then it happened. The lights in the room flickered once, twice, before dimming low. The hum of the ship stuttered for a moment, and Daniel sat up quickly. He knew the systems were stable. Nothing should have failed. When he looked at her, he saw her glowing lines pulsing brighter. She was smiling, a faint smile, but enough too. Freeze his breath, the silence broke, not with words, but with the crackle of energy. The chains around her wrists sparked faintly, the collar at her neck glowing hot. For the first time, Daniel realized the truth. The silence was not weakness, it was control. She was waiting, saving her strength, and he whispered in the dark. Fear and awe mixing inside him, "You're not chained, you're waiting." Her smile widened slightly, and in that moment, Daniel understood something terrifying. She was not his prisoner, he was hers. The days passed slowly, but nothing felt normal in Daniel's quarters. The alien woman, still bound, moved like a shadow in the room, always silent, always watchful. Daniel tried to tell himself that she was harmless as long as the chains held. But deep inside, he knew it was a lie. Something about her presence disturbed the air itself. As if the ship's walls knew she did not belong in chains, one morning Daniel woke to the sharp smell of smoke. The lights above his head flickered violently, sparking before returning to a dim glow. He rushed to the control panel on the wall. Tapping commands to reset the power, nothing was broken. Everything looked stable. And yet, when he turned, his eyes caught the faint glow of the lines across her skin. Brighter than before, it was no accident. She was affecting the ship without. Even touching it, Daniel's breath caught. "Are you doing this?" he whispered. His voice trembling, the woman tilted her head slightly, her eyes glowing faintly in the shadows. No words, no sound, but her expression told him the answer. She was. That night, the silence grew heavier. Daniel could not sleep. His heart pounded. As the room grew colder, the engines outside roared, then stuttered. As if choking on invisible hands, he sat up quickly and saw the collar around her neck sparking faintly. The chains rattled, though she had not moved. Her eyes, glowing softly, were fixed on him, unblinking, unreadable. And then he saw the tiniest crack along one of the cuffs, a hairline fracture glowing faintly with light. Panic struck his chest. He stepped closer, his voice sharp. "What? Are you?" For the first time, her lips parted to form words, though her voice was strange. Deep and soft, echoing with something not human. "I am not yours," she said simply. The words chilled the room more than any silence could. Daniel froze, the sound of her voice lingering like a ghost. She had spoken, but not with fear, not with submission. Her tone carried weight. The weight of someone who had commanded armies, someone who had once been free. And in that moment, Daniel realized the chains were not a sign of weakness. They were the only thing keeping the universe safe from her. The next day, Daniel was called to the command deck. Reports of failing systems had reached the officers, and suspicion hung in the air. Some whispered about sabotage, others blamed faulty repairs. But when Daniel walked past, he felt their eyes glance at him, at the prize chained in his quarters. Whispers followed him like shadows. "Dangerous," they said, "not human." Another voice muttered. Daniel clenched his fists, but said nothing. Back in his quarters, he studied her again. Her chains looked heavy, but cracks now showed in. Two of the cuffs, faint but real, glowing as if light itself was leaking through. Daniel stepped closer, his voice tense. "Why are you doing this? Do you want to kill us all?" She met his eyes, and for the first time, he thought he saw something different. Not anger, not hatred, but something softer, fleeting. "No," she whispered, her voice low but steady. "I want to be free." Her words struck Daniel like a blade. Free. It was not a demand for destruction. It was a plea for life, but could he trust her, or was this another trick, another mask to lower his guard? That night, he tested her words. He removed the chain from her ankles, only one. While leaving the rest locked tight, she stretched her legs slowly, her movements graceful, controlled. Her eyes flicked to him, and she spoke softly. "You are braver than the others." Daniel swallowed hard. unsure if it was praise or warning. Then the ship alarm suddenly screamed. Red lights flashed across the ceiling. The sound of weapons firing echoed outside. Raiders' enemies who still hunted even after the war. Daniel grabbed his weapon and rushed for the door. But something stopped him. A voice, calm and steady. "Take me with you," she said, her eyes burning bright. "Or you will not survive." Daniel hesitated. Torn between fear and instinct, she was chained, dangerous, unpredictable. But something inside told him she was telling the truth. The cracks in the chains had revealed more than her strength. They revealed her will. And Daniel knew he had reached a point where he could no longer ignore it. The alarm grew louder. Explosions rocked the ship, and Daniel's hand trembled on the door. The alien woman stood tall, her broken cuff glowing like a star. Her gaze locked on his. In that moment, Daniel faced the truth. The chains were breaking with or without his choice. The only question was whether he would stand against her or stand with her. The alarm screamed across the ship. Red lights flashing through the steel corridors. Daniel's heart pounded as he grabbed his rifle. The sound of explosions shaking the floor under his boots. The raiders had struck fast, boarding the vessel before anyone could prepare. Soldiers rushed past his quarters, shouting orders, but Daniel did not move. Not yet, because behind him stood the chained alien woman, her glowing eyes fixed on him. "Take me with you," she repeated. Her voice calm against the chaos outside. Her collar buzzed faintly, sparks dancing across the cracks in her cuffs. Her chains were failing. Daniel could see it clearly now. Every second he waited. The glow in her skin pulsed brighter, like a storm waiting to break free. Daniel raised his rifle, not at the door, but at her. "If I free you, what will you do?" he asked. His voice shaking, her gaze did not waver. Sharp and steady. "I will fight. I will kill your enemies, and I will protect you. But if you keep me chained, we will both die." The words struck him with weight, not spoken like a plea, but like a promise. The ship rocked violently, another blast shaking the walls. Daniel heard screams echoing in the halls. The raiders were already inside. His choice pressed on him like a blade against his throat. Trust her and risk everything, or leave her chained and face certain death. His hand trembled as it reached for the chains. The key was cold in his fingers, heavy like guilt. He unlocked one cuff, then another, each click echoing louder than the alarms. Her arms fell free, the glowing lines across her skin flaring brighter, alive with energy. For a moment, Daniel's chest froze with fear. Had he just doomed himself? But the woman did not attack. Instead, she stepped forward, her posture tall, her presence commanding. She looked less like a prisoner now, and more like a warrior waking from long sleep. She met his gaze and spoke firmly. "My name is Leora." The ship shook again, sparks raining from the ceiling. Daniel's breath hitched, but he nodded, whispering her name under his breath, "Leora." It felt strange, dangerous, but powerful. For the first time, she was not just the slave, not just the alien. She was someone. The door to his quarters burst open to raiders storming. Inside, with weapons raised, before Daniel could lift his rifle, Leora moved. Her chains clattered as her glowing hands slammed against the raiders with terrifying force. A wave of energy burst from her body, sending them flying into the steel walls, their weapons shattering. Daniel's eyes widened, breath stolen from his chest. She had not lied. She was more dangerous than he could imagine. "Stay close," she said firmly, grabbing one of the fallen weapons with ease. For a moment, Daniel hesitated, but then followed her into the chaos. The corridors were filled with fire and smoke, soldiers battling raiders in brutal combat. Daniel fired his rifle, covering the squad, while Leora moved like a storm. her chains glowing as she struck with power that no human could match. She fought not like a beast, but like a trained warrior. Every move precise, efficient, deadly. The soldiers who saw her froze in shock. Some shouted, "She's free." Others cursed Daniel, calling him a fool, but their fear quickly turned to silence when they saw her tear through the raiders. Saving lives instead of ending them, she stood in front of Daniel like a shield, taking blasts that should have killed him, her power burning brighter each time. After what felt like hours, the alarms finally dimmed. The raiders retreating into the void, the halls lay broken, filled with smoke, wounded soldiers, and scattered weapons. Daniel leaned against the wall, exhausted, his rifle slipping from his hands. Beside him, Leora stood tall, her collar cracked, her chains nearly destroyed, her eyes burning bright. She looked powerful, untouchable. And yet, when she turned to Daniel, her voice softened. "You chose to trust me." Daniel met her gaze, his throat dry. "I didn't have a choice," he whispered. But deep down, he knew it wasn't true. He had chosen, and that choice had changed everything. Word spread quickly across the ship. Some soldiers looked at Daniel with respect, others with suspicion. Many feared Leora, but none could deny she had saved them. The commander summoned Daniel to explain himself, his voice sharp with anger. "You were told to keep her chained," he thundered. "You disobeyed. You've risked all our lives." Daniel clenched his fists, his voice steady, though his chest burned. "She saved us. Without her, we would be dead. You can call it disobedience, but I call it survival." The commander's eyes narrowed, his anger hidden behind a mask of control. "She is dangerous. She will never be one of us," he warned. But Daniel said nothing. Because when he looked at Leora standing in the corner, watching him silently, he knew the truth. She was already more than one of them. She was his ally, his secret, his dangerous choice. That night, when the halls fell quiet again, Daniel sat alone in his quarters. Leora stood by the window, her glowing eyes fixed on the endless stars. The chains hung loosely from her wrists. Cracked and broken, Daniel knew they could not hold her much longer, and yet he did not reach for the key to lock them again. For the first time, the silence between. The battle with the raiders had left the ship scarred, walls blackened with fire and floors smeared with blood. For hours, the crew worked to repair the damage, dragging away wreckage and tending to the wounded. Among the whispers that spread like wildfire, one name came up again and again: Leora. Some spoke her name with awe, others with fear, but none could deny what they had seen. She had turned the tide of battle, and without her, the raiders might have taken the ship. Daniel walked the halls with his head low. He felt the weight of every stare, every hushed voice behind his back. Some soldiers muttered, "Traitor." Others spat on the floor when he passed, but a few saluted him quietly, their eyes full of gratitude. To them, he was the man who had saved them, even if he had broken the rules to do it. In his quarters, Leora sat by the window again, her eyes glowing faintly as the stars drifted past. The chains around her wrists were shattered now, hanging like ornaments instead of bonds. Her collar was cracked nearly in half, its hum weaker than ever. She looked less like a prisoner with each passing day and more like a queen in exile. Daniel found himself staring at her longer than he should, wondering if he had unleashed salvation, nor destruction. "You should hate me," Daniel muttered one night, sitting across from her, his voice heavy. "Your people were our enemies. We took your world. We enslaved you. Yet here you are, helping me." Leora turned her gaze from the stars, her voice calm but sharp. "You think I help you?" she asked softly. "No, Daniel. I help myself. I fight because survival is all I have left." Her words stung, but there was truth in them. Truth Daniel could not deny. Still, in the days that followed, something strange happened. The silence between them began to soften. Leora spoke more, not often, but enough to reveal pieces of herself. She told him her name meant light in the storm, a name given by a mother who died long ago. She told him of her world, once filled with rivers of fire and cities of crystal, now reduced to ruins by human conquest. Daniel listened, his chest heavy with guilt. Yet he could not stop himself from asking questions. Her voice, once sharp as steel, sometimes carried a softness he had not expected. But trust was dangerous, and the universe was cruel. One evening, as Daniel returned from his shift, he found 2 guards waiting at his door. The commander had sent them. Their orders clear: take the alien, one said coldly. She belongs in the cells, not in a soldier's quarters. Daniel's blood turned to ice. If you touch her, he warned, his hand tightening around his rifle, you'll regret it. The guards sneered, raising their weapons, but before a single shot could be fired, Leora stepped forward, her glowing hands raised. And in an instant, the guards were thrown against the wall, their weapons clattering to the floor. She did not kill them, but her eyes burned with fire, her voice sharp. Never again, she growled. I will not be chained again. The guards scrambled away. Terrified, their faces pale with fear, Daniel's chest pounded, his heart torn between relief and dread. He had wanted to protect her, but now she had revealed herself fully, and there was no hiding it anymore. The next day, rumors spread even faster. Some claimed Leora had bewitched Daniel. Others whispered that he had betrayed the fleet to serve her. The commander called Daniel into his chambers, his eyes filled with cold fury. You have gone too far. The commander spat. This alien is not your ally. She is a weapon. And weapons are meant to be controlled. If you cannot do it, then we will. Daniel's jaw clenched, anger rising in his chest. She saved us. She saved me. And still you see her as nothing more than a tool. You are blind, the commander leaned forward, his voice low and poisonous. You will regret this loyalty. Soldier, one day she will turn on you, and when she does, I will be waiting that night. Daniel sat with Leora in silence. His hands shook as he replayed the commander's words in his mind. Was it true? Would she betray him when the chains finally broke? He looked at her, and she looked back, her gaze unreadable, her glowing lines casting strange shadows across the walls. You don't trust me, she said quietly, her tone neither angry nor hurt, simply stating a fact. Daniel swallowed hard, his voice low. I want to, but I don't know if I can. For a long time, she said nothing, only staring at him with those burning eyes. Then, slowly, she leaned forward, whispering words that cut deeper than any blade. Then we are the same, Daniel. For I don't know if I can trust you either. The silence returned, heavier than ever. Daniel turned away, his chest aching with doubt. Trust and betrayal were 2 sides of the same blade, and he realized they were walking on its edge. Any wrong step would cut them both. But as the stars drifted beyond the window, he also knew something else. No matter the danger, no matter the doubt, he could not let her go. Not anymore. Because in the fire of her eyes, he saw something he had never found in all his years of war. Hope. The ship drifted through the endless dark, engines humming faintly against the silence of space. Days had passed since the attack, but Daniel felt no peace. The whispers of betrayal followed him everywhere. Soldiers avoided his eyes. Officers spoke in hushed tones, and the commander's gaze burned with suspicion every time they crossed paths. And in the middle of it all was Leora, silent yet unshaken, her glowing lines brighter with every passing day, her chains nothing more than scraps of metal hanging loosely from her wrists. One evening, as Daniel sat at his desk, trying and failing to write his report, Leora's voice broke the silence. "Do you know why your people fear me?" she asked, her tone calm but heavy. Daniel looked up, startled. "Because you're powerful," he said quietly. "Because they can't control you." Laura's lips curved into a faint smile, but her eyes held no humor. "No, Daniel. They fear me because of who I am, not what I can do." Her words sent a chill through him. "What do you mean?" he asked, leaning forward. Leora stood and walked slowly to the window, the stars reflecting against her silver hair. "I am not just another alien taken in war. I am the last daughter of the Zerati throne," she said, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 years. "Daniel's breath caught royalty," he whispered. She nodded, her glowing eyes fixed on the void. "My people once ruled over 100 worlds. Our empire was old when your species first looked at the stars, but your fleets came with fire, and one by one, our cities fell, until only ruins remained." Daniel's chest tightened, guilt twisting in his stomach. "And you?" he whispered. "How were you captured?" Leora turned to him, her face unreadable. "They betrayed me," she said simply. "The humans promised peace. If I surrendered, I believed their lies. I stepped forward to protect my people, and they chained me like an animal, paraded me as a trophy, and gave me away as a prize." Her voice shook with anger, but her eyes glistened with pain. Daniel swallowed hard, shame burning inside him. "They used you," he muttered. Her gaze pierced him, sharp as a blade. "And now you must decide if you will do the same," she whispered. The weight of her words crushed him. Daniel wanted to speak, to promise her freedom, to swear he was not like the others, but his throat closed because deep inside, he knew he was trapped between two worlds. To his people, she was a weapon, a dangerous threat that must remain in chains. To her, he was just another human, one heartbeat away from betraying her like all the rest. Silence filled the room until Leora spoke again, softer this time. "My mother used to tell me that chains cannot break a spirit. Only betrayal can. That is why I fight, not to destroy, but to remain whole." Her words cut through Daniel's chest, heavier than any order he had ever followed. He saw the fire in her eyes, the strength of someone who had lost everything but refused to bow. And for the first time, Daniel understood that his choice was not just about survival. It was about loyalty, about who he truly was. That night, Daniel dreamed of fire. He saw cities burning, skies torn apart by fleets of ships, alien children crying as chains were clasped around their wrists. And among the flames stood Leora, her crown shattered, her body bound, her eyes filled not with fear, but with defiance. He woke drenched in sweat. The image seared into his mind. The next morning, the commander called him again. This time, his words carried poison. "Your alien has a history," he said coldly. "We know who she is. Do you think we would give you such a prize without reason? She is the last key to the Zerati, the symbol of their empire. If she rises again, rebellion will follow. That is why she must remain in chains or die." Daniel's fists clench, fury rising in his chest. "She is not a symbol. She is a person," he snapped. The commander's eyes narrowed, Kay's voice like steel. "Careful, soldier. You are walking the line of treason. Choose her, and you will lose everything." Daniel left the chamber with his head spinning. Every step felt heavier, every breath sharper when he returned to his quarters. Leora stood waiting, her gaze steady. "You?" "No, now," she said quietly. "You know what I am?" Daniel nodded, his voice rough. "They fear you because you're more than a prisoner." "Your hope." For the first time, her expression softened, the fire in her eyes dimming just slightly. "Hope can be more dangerous than any weapon," she whispered that night as the ship drifted silently through the stars. Daniel sat across from her, his heart torn in two. He knew his commander was right. The truth spread, rebellions would rise, wars would reignite. Countless lives would be lost, but he also knew that chaining her, silencing her, killing her was no different from the cruelty he had sworn to. Fight against. In the glow of the stars, Daniel made a choice, not with words, but with the quiet act of leaving her chains unlocked. The sound of the broken links falling to the floor echoed like thunder in his heart. Leora met his eyes, her voice steady but filled with something he had never heard before. "Then you are not like the others," she whispered. Daniel exhaled, his chest burning. "No," he said softly, "I never was." And in that moment, a fragile bond formed, not of chains, not of fear, but of truth. But the shadows of betrayal still lingered, for both of them knew the fleet would never allow such a bond to survive. The silence of space stretched endless beyond the windows, stars glowing like distant fires, but inside the ship, war had already begun, not with weapons, but with whispers. Daniel could feel it in every hallway, in every stare that followed. The soldiers no longer saw him as one of their own. They saw him as the man who freed the alien queen. And the commanders watched him like hunters circling prey, waiting for a mistake. Leora remained close, her presence calm yet sharp as a blade. Her chains were gone now, the broken links discarded like old lies. She no longer carried the weight of a prisoner. Instead, she walked the corridors with quiet dignity. Every soldier who looked into her glowing eyes felt unease, some with fear, some with awe. To them, she was a threat. To Daniel, she was something else entirely. One evening, the commander summoned him once more. This time, there was no pretense of order, no mask of patience. "You are finished," the commander said coldly. "You have chosen her over your people. You have betrayed your oath. And for that, you will face court-martial." Daniel stood stiff, his chest burning. "Call it what you want," he answered, "but I will not let you chain her again." The commander's eyes narrowed. "Then you leave me no choice," he said, and guards moved forward, weapons raised, but before they could touch Daniel, the walls shook with sudden impact. The ship's alarms screamed once more. Red lights flooding the chamber, raiders again, striking at the wounded vessel like wolves on blood. The commander cursed and barked orders, but Daniel did not wait. He turned and ran, and at his side ran Leora, her glowing lines blazing brighter than ever. Together, they fought through the chaos. Soldiers and raiders clashing in narrow halls, explosions shaking the deck beneath their feet. Daniel's rifle fired again and again, his hands burning from the heat, but it was Leora who tore through the enemy lines like a storm, her power exploding in arcs of light that shattered weapons and sent raiders fleeing in terror. Every soldier who saw her could not deny it any longer. She was not a slave, not a weapon, but a force beyond chains, at the heart of the ship, where the engines burned hot and the steel groaned under the attack. Daniel and Leora found themselves cornered. Dozens of raiders surrounded them, weapons aimed, ready to strike. Daniel's breath came ragged, sweat dripping down his face, his rifle nearly empty. Beside him, Leora stood tall, her eyes glowing like suns, her voice calm. "This is where choices are made," she said softly. Daniel looked at her, his chest tightening. "Then I choose you," he whispered. She turned her gaze to him, surprised, her lips parting, but no words escaping. Then she raised her hands and unleashed a storm of energy so bright the raiders were thrown back like leaves in fire. The walls shook, the floor cracked, the air itself seemed to bend under her power. Daniel shielded his eyes, but through the burning light he saw her, not as a prisoner, not as a queen, but as something far greater, his partner. When the battle ended, silence fell heavy. The raiders were gone, the ship battered but alive. Daniel dropped to his knees, exhausted, his rifle slipping from his hand. Leora stood above him, her power dimming slowly, the glow fading until only faint lines remained. She looked down at him with eyes that no longer burned with hatred, but with something softer, fragile. "You spoke truth." She whispered, "You chose me." Daniel nodded, his voice hoarse, "And I will keep choosing you." But he knew the danger was not over. The commander would never forgive. The fleet would never allow a bond between human and alien queen. The whispers of rebellion would spread, and war would return. Yet in that moment, as Leora extended her hand to him, Daniel felt no fear, because what bound them now was stronger than any chain. Days later, under the cover of silence, Daniel made his final choice. He stole a small shuttle, stripped of markings, its engines hidden from the fleet's watch, and with Leora by his side, he fled into the stars, leaving behind the steel halls, the chains, and the lies. As the shuttle drifted into the endless dark, Leora sat beside him, her silver hair glowing faintly in the starlight. For the first time, she smiled, not with mockery, not with anger, but with warmth. "You have lost your people," she said. Softly, Daniel shook his head, his eyes on her. "No," he whispered, "I have found mine." The stars stretched infinite ahead, a road of fire and silence. Neither of them knew what worlds awaited, what dangers hunted, what destiny called, but together they would face it. Not as captor and prisoner, not as soldier and queen, but as something far stronger, a man and a woman, bound not by chains, but by choice. And in the quiet hum of the shuttle, as the galaxy spread wide before them, Daniel realized a truth that no commander, number army, no war could break. He had not freed her, she had freed him.